for hopping on with us this evening. We're going to give everybody about the next 60 seconds just to get in and get settled, and then we will kick into this evening's webinar. So we'll give everyone the next 30 to 60 seconds to get in, and then really appreciate our two guests joining with us this evening, and we'll get started here in just a second.
Absolutely. And I'm going to take that time just to admire the plant right next to Jackson. We do not have green thumbs in our house, so I can't keep plants like that alive. So kudos to you, Jackson.
You got to have a little greenery. It's just, otherwise you're just looking at a blank wall. I tried to stage it.
Did you add the slats to your wall to give you that nice background texture?
No, this was with these. Yeah, gotta jazz it up a little.
I like it. I like that we all got the blue blazer.
We definitely got the blue memo.
Very on theme.
Yeah. All righty, folks.
I'm down with Teem too.
We are going to kick into it. As we start, the topic of tonight is, are you optimizing for something that should not exist? And we're going to go into that a little bit more. But Aaron, I even think before we kick into introductions here, you said something interesting, and you have a unique purview of seeing thousands of practices and knowing personally hundreds of optometrists. Jackson, you see a very different purview from the financial side. And before we went on air, you kind of mentioned that you're seeing turbulence in the industry where visits may be the same, but there is financial stress. If you want to just elaborate on that a little bit more, I think it kind of leads into this subject on how do we begin to change things?
Yeah, absolutely. A mentor of mine, when I first became an owner of the practice and got a little bit stressed watching the cash flow cycle, laughed and said that you'll realize that as you own a practice, there's seasons for everything. And there's seasons at the good time where you really, it's hard not to be successful. And there's seasons where you just face some headwinds. And I think given the current numbers that we're seeing across the nation right now, patients are still coming in for eye exams, but maybe wanting to or challenging us a little bit more on the value of spending money for glasses and contacts and additional services and whatnot. I think, depending on whatever news station you watch, they're talking about financial things, government shutdown, what interest rates are at and all sorts of different things. And so when patients hear that and consumers hear that, sometimes it means that they're tightening up just a bit, and we're seeing it. Doesn't mean it's a negative thing to the business. It just means that that's the season that we're in. And I look at those opportunities or times as opportunities to really refine the practice so that, when seasons are good, you can harvest even more and then weather the storm when they aren't quite as strong.
Aaron, before you hopped on, Jackson and I were chatting, and Jackson obviously sees a ton of different, optometry practices, and he was talking about these outliers that just kick ass. And what I think is interesting is it is a lemon season right now, but then there's certain people, Jackson, that you see that, can harvest more in the good seasons, but even during tougher times can run really efficient, focused practices. And I think what we're talking about tonight is like, how do people, no matter the season, run an optimized practice that's different and make changes that put them in a, more plentiful position and offer better patient care and have less stressed staff at the same time.
Yeah.
Aaron, you want to just do a brief intro? Aaron's the star of our show tonight. Jackson and I are the backup dancers.
Hardly, but I do want to see you guys dance one time. So Dr. Aaron Werner, I am senior partner at Werner Optometry. I purchased the practice from my father 10 years ago, and he started it when I was in 4th grade. So I'm 5th generation optometrist. I've done almost every role in the practice, including child labor when I was young and had to go in at night and edge lenses. I also serve as the senior director for learning and development for Vision Source, so all the education that Vision Source produces. And I have the Aaron Werner podcast on the iCode Media channel, where we talk about all sorts of different things related to the optometric space.
Awesome. Thanks, Aaron. Backup dancer Jackson.
Hey, I could be a good backup dancer. I've got a few moves. We won't share them tonight. Just don't want to
Hard
scare them. Yeah, in case there's children watching. But no, Jackson Pace, founder of Refractional CFO, CPA. I've got kind of a unique background as a CPA. I started my career in public accounting in really the firm that I was at originally, kind of way back in the day. Really just more or less a tax shop. We did just tons of tax returns, and kind of got to the point where I was burnt out and had an opportunity to actually go work as a full-time CFO for a kind of a larger ophthalmology group that had actually purchased several OD practices and kind of rolled them into the fold. And so presented a unique opportunity for somebody to come in with a kind of a accounting and finance background and really just help them understand their practice, and kind of got to the point where I really started to understand the optometry industry and got to go to a lot of the fun conferences, got to go to Vision Expo and all these other ones, and got to the point where it turned into opportunities for me to consult with optometrists, and eventually led into founding Refractional CFO, which more or less a CPA firm that just focuses on working with optometry practices across the nation and doing the taxes, the financial planning, and all the things that doctors hopefully don't want to do, because we like doing them.
When you look at those outlier practices that are simple and optimized, Jackson, how many leaps and bounds are they ahead compared to the norm?
They're quite a bit. We see a lot of different practices, all the way from a brand new cold start, nothing in revenue, all the way up to established practices that are just doing amazing things. And we kind of see those outliers in kind of the thing that especially as you guys are talking in the opening, something that kind of sticks out with them as a recurring theme is they have a plan and they have confidence in it, and they're not afraid to maybe change the way they practice or the way they do things, because we all know that times, they change. What maybe worked now probably maybe wouldn't have worked a year ago, and probably won't work a year from now. So I think some things always stay the same to some degree, but we have to be willing to adapt and change and kind of roll with the punches.
And Jackson shared some numbers before we went on. Those outlier practices that have optimized are leaps and bounds. And I think the thing that I see from my years, and I've been in brick and mortar healthcare for the last 8 years, and I'm really passionate that there's, seasons obviously within optometry, but there are practices who just have found that focus and deliver great patient care while also making a really big difference in their life. And so what I'm excited to talk about today is how we have just stacked and not innovated our practices. And Aaron and I, the premise for this webinar tonight came from a meeting or a conversation him and I had at Vision Expo West. And Aaron, you kind of talked about what ODs really want, and it's making enough money to live the life that they want to live, delivering great patient care, and having staff that's not burnt out and overworked, and harmony. You want to elaborate on that a little bit more?
Yeah, happy to. I think that at our core, the optometrists founded this profession because we want to take care of people. We want to take care of our patients. We want to take care of our staff. We want to take care of our staff's family. We want to take care of our communities. It's who we are at the core. And the more responsibility we have as optometrists in the form of additional diagnosis and scope of practice expansion and technology that we're now responsible for and integrating into the practice, the harder it is to really maintain what people like to refer to as the work-life balance, both for ourselves, for our teams, and while still delivering the care that we want for the practice. And so how do you manage all the different hats we have to wear, from doctor to CEO to CFO to toilet repair guy when that happens in the practice, and do it all in a way that helps our patients get the service and the experience that they need and want, that our staff get to work in the environment that they want to work in. And I think that, and then finding the time to address it all. So it's really easy to get stuck in ruts and then wake up one day and say, hey, this isn't where I want to be. But it's also challenging to find the time to look to continually innovate.
Here's a question for you that you may or may not have the answer to. Do most ODs buy a existing practice like yourself, or what percentage of them are building new? Do you know kind of the
That's
ratio?
a really good,
Like
that's a good question. I don't know if I have a number. I would say that the majority buy an existing practice. It's a different person that buys a practice than starts a practice cold, because they're two different challenges. And so I don't think it's the same kind of persona that does it. There's a healthy mix of both, but I think the majority are transitioning into ownership of an existing practice.
Yeah. And the reason I ask is you obviously purchased your practice, and something that we see commonly in optometry is there's the front, and the front is not optimized and is frankly broken. And it's not because there's bad people up there, but it's because you bought a practice that had someone who picks up the phones, they do the recare calls, they do the confirmations, they verify the insurance, they check the patients in, they take the payments, they follow up on deliveries. And the process of the front desk, as it's been inherited generation by generation and sale by sale, is ultimately broken. But it's the model as people know it. And our conversation tonight is, are we optimizing the front desk because that's just the way we think about all of it being there? Or is there the active discussion that things can and should be built different in optometry? Jackson said something really interesting. The game changes every single year. And so are we updating our systems, or are we continuing to do things the same, hoping that we're actually just going to work harder and get the same or better results?
And can I kind of one thing, Cory, even if you can go back to that other slide. So one thing that I noticed, and this is probably just from my experience, we work with a lot of cold start practices. So, doctor with maybe 1.5 staff, all the way up to established practices. And a lot of times what I see is doctors, like, they are very skilled. They get in, they know how to run a practice. And so, like with this slide, one person doing 10 to 15 different jobs at once. I think a lot of times it's because they're really good at those, but they're really bad at figuring out how to make other people good at those jobs. And so I think as we kind of go throughout this, and people that are listening, hopefully you can maybe recognize some of those things that you're really good at, but probably should be able to hand off. And I think you've got to start to develop ways to get really good at handing those things off to somebody else and, figuring out processes. I mean, I don't think we're going to get to that level of detail, but, definitely have to figure out ways to let go. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting you said that. Delegation is not our strong suit. And then leading into this slide on the systems, we're really good at building Legos, where we just add another piece, another brick to the house that we built. We're really bad about taking off pieces. And so there's a lot of addition in the systems, and especially in an optometry practice, there's not a whole lot of elimination within a practice. And so it's a kind of a neat model. And I love this story, and you tell it best, Cory, so I'll let you tell it, but it's exactly this right here.
Well, I was just thinking, so you said something, that's why I skipped ahead to the slide. Like, I think it's ODs, but I even want and I run a very unique business where we get to see people all around the globe. And it's something that we hear in America all the time, that we are a consumer-built economy and consumer-built users. When we look at innovation, I think in our head, there is the idea that innovation is adding and getting bigger. In America, we always want things to be bigger and badder. But what we want to make the argument about tonight is this isn't about stacking more in your practice. When Jackson and I were on stage, he said our practices that are the unicorns are actually just really freaking efficient. And Elon's got a quote here that says, the most common mistake of smart engineers is to optimize for a thing that shouldn't exist. These are the engines behind SpaceX. And something really unique, and a theme that you'll see from Raptor 1 to Raptor 2 to Raptor 3, is they're getting leaner. In most things in America, let's take cars from the Model T to today. What have we done mostly in America? We've gone bigger and we've stacked features. And we've done the exact, like if we kick it back here a couple slides, like if we think about our front desk, back in the day, a reception desk was built to check patients in and to check patients out. But then eventually we're like, oh, great. Well, if no one's there, why don't we have you call the patients? And wait, you can answer the new patients too. And so we stacked and we stacked and we stacked and we stacked. And what we want to spend some time talking about today is there's things that should take place at your front desk. And there's things that actually don't need to take place there. And when you optimize and simplify, just like you see here with SpaceX's engines, you can actually get better performance with less stress and greater focus.
Yeah.
And one thing, like we sit in the world, and I didn't do a good job of introing myself. My name's Cory. I'm our founder here at Teem. Skipped over. It's always hardest to talk about yourself.
It is.
Most people call us and say, oh, I really need to outsource my recare calls, or I need to outsource my insurance verifications. And what I think about all the time is, what if the engine actually doesn't need to be built from thinking about what are we outsourcing? It's what doesn't need to sit at your front desk. If you created a construction-based physical back office in your practice, what would you put in there that doesn't need to be patient-facing? Well, hiring a virtual team member or having someone focused back there is the exact same concept of elevating and delegating and getting people to be focused, instead of this idea that we're going to push two people in the front desk. We're going to have them manage all of these different things, but the inefficiency that is then gathered and the burnout that is driven on these team members from it ultimately is leading to failure. And we have to change that way of thinking. Instead of stacking, we need to rearrange and simplify.
Yeah, 100%. I think on top of it as well, we find really good people who we connect with, because as doctors, we tend to be people. And so we find other people who are also people. And some of the tasks they do are very people oriented, but some of the tasks they have to do are not. Answering a phone call, pulling insurance, some of the administrative type tasks are challenging. So, but when we have a people person who's being asked to do a task that they're not, they don't love, it's not part of their persona to love it. They can do it, and oftentimes they're really good at it. But if you do that enough, you start not having fun, and you start getting burnout because you're not getting the fulfillment that you need, because your strengths are not being harnessed. And so what we found in this delegating tasks is really understanding what needs, where are we leveraging our strengths, and where can we find somebody who's really good at what that person's, I don't want to say weakness, but their non-strength is, and create an opportunity for that person to leverage their strength. And now I've got two people engaged in what they do best, and the outcome and experience is almost always better.
Yeah. And one thing I'll add, in fact, actually go back to the picture with the engines, because I feel like it leads really good into this delegating task. That Raptor one, it kind of reminds me of, the practice owner where, and this is some of the advice, kind of as I started my firm, that somebody gave to me is, you kind of start off and you have one employee. So if one employee, they come into your office, or team member, whatever we want to call them, they come into your office and they have an issue and they want to dump it on you. And so at the beginning, it's real easy to just say, oh, well, I don't have anything to do. I'll take your issue, I'll solve it, and life will be good. But then you have 2 team members, and 3 and 4 and 5. And all of a sudden now you've got 6 people coming in every day, dumping stuff on your plate. And if you don't kind of learn that habit of kind of redirecting it back at them, I feel like you end up looking like this Raptor one. Like, it's just like it gets the job done, but it just looks like total chaos. And I'm sure
it takes so much effort. It's the idea that you're pushing the rock up the hill every day, because you become the linchpin of solving problems.
Yeah. And so kind of is, and I can only imagine as it went from Raptor 1 to 2 to 3, how many problems that people were solving and working on, and eventually just becoming more efficient, because instead of having one person trying to just do everything, they kind of turned that on its head, and it's like, well, let's have a lot of people do, everything, and it just became more efficient. It became more effective, and so I don't know, delegating, it's definitely important.
So you're
It's
saying
delegating,
something-
and it's solving it's delegating
No,
and it's solving the symptom, not really understanding, taking the time to solve the problem always. And actually, Jackson, I was gonna give you credit, because a lot of us, well, all of us as doctors, except for a handful that went and got their MBAs, we went to doctor school. I didn't go to business school, right? And I thought you were going to throw your head in your hand, Cory, because you've heard this story multiple times. So we don't know. And I know that when I own a business, I need a CPA, and I assume that he's going to help save me taxes. The problem is I also sometimes assume he's going to help give me good financial advice, which often is not the case, because I'm paying him just to help save me taxes. And we've all got horror stories of buying that equipment or buying that car that we didn't need and putting ourselves further in debt, but we did save on taxes. And so instead of worrying about solving problem A, understanding the bigger picture is, hey, I want to understand, have a good financial plan where I don't need a CPA, I need a CFO, and who also understands taxes, because I want to make money and I only want to pay the government what they should be paid, right? So it's really kind of understanding the right pieces. And that Raptor one is like, well, I need a CPA, I need this person, I need that person. The parts just don't always work well together. I mean, the thing's hideous. It doesn't even look well. It looks like, something from Star Wars that at the junkyard that they all, made work. But it took somebody to step back and say, hey, why this piece here? Why that piece there? What's the ultimate goal we're trying to achieve? And do we need all these pieces to achieve that goal?
Yeah.
And I think what you're talking about is hard. As you mentioned, doctors go to medical school and spend years specializing clinically. And you want to be as cautious as possible to take care of the humans that you serve. What we're talking about here on the business side is changing, innovating, and failing. Raptor 1, Raptor 2, and Raptor 3, there were 20 to 40 launches that exploded on the deck, where they said, all right, we're going to tinker with this and figure out if it works. And both of you said, right when we were getting started, I thought both of your intros were perfect for tonight. If people don't change, they are going to be left behind or screwed going forward with tariffs and insurance payouts and rise in food and staffing costs and in rent for your practice. And for the last 60 years, you could marginally get better at the same game and be okay. I feel coming into 2020 and post-COVID, the game has incrementally changed with AI and, government there's just been so much change that if people don't begin to tinker with the model, and you don't always have to get it right, but if you don't start experimenting with what can you simplify and what can you optimize within your practice, you will get in an increasingly more stressful situation every single year. And that's why we believe in the optimization of the front. There's certain things that don't need to take place there. And Jackson, why I'm really excited to kind of kick it over to you here is you see practices that focus on the simplification and optimization, and you can kind of chat through here how it makes a huge difference in driving cost savings and higher income in the different ways that optometrists can go at it.
Yeah. And sorry, I apologize. You guys hear me okay? It kicked me out and then brought me back in. So I don't know if
Hey, we didn't even know that you left us.
Yeah.
You've been here the whole time with us.
I was practicing a dance there in the background. Yeah, so I missed everything that you said, but
it was a perfect intro that you didn't hear anything, and then you're just like, all right, Jackson, take it away.
We can take it away. So no, this is one of my favorite sides, because we work with, practices, a lot of times they come to me and 99% of the time it's a lot of times they have problems. And I'm the first one to say I definitely don't have the answers to every single problem out there. But I feel like from a financial standpoint, we can usually look at things and start to kind of form an analysis around where we know the problems are. And so I wanted to use this as kind of an example of, maybe a practice that, comes to me in to kind of walk through this example. You can see essentially what we're looking at is a very, very simplified, profit and loss statement. So up across the top, we have our income. So say this practice is doing over 1.6 million, costs are 488,000. So their gross profit, a little over $1 million. As we come down and we look at our expenses, operations, 190,000, personnel, 871,000, facility, 128,000. So total expenses, $1,190,000 in 20, or 1,190, over $1 million. So the thing that's wrong with this picture is we get down to the net income and it's negative. So we definitely never want to get into a situation where we kind of have a negative net income. And so is practices come to me in scenarios like this, their number one concern is, well, how can we fix it? What are some of the things that we can do to make it so instead of losing, $12,000 a year, maybe their goal is they want to make $100,000 a year. So we've highlighted two examples here, and I feel like a lot of times there's always two ways to solve the equation. The first one is we can adjust the income, and the second one is we can, adjust the expenses. And so I'll kind of, walk through both scenarios. So in scenario one, if we do nothing but, adjust the income, you can see that top line, we go from 1.6 to almost 1.9. And for you, Aaron, I mean, how hard is it to do that in a practice? I mean, when we're talking on adding, 6, 7, 8, almost, over $200,000 of income to a practice, is it something you can just snap your fingers and it's there? Or, I mean, does that take time?
Oh, Lord, no, that takes time.
So yeah, short answer is it just does not happen overnight. I mean, a lot of times we can think and feel like, well, yeah, we definitely want to grow the practice. So that's always part of the goal is we want to increase revenue. We want to grow that way, but it takes time. And so if we're looking to do something quick, which, if you're a practice that's losing money, yeah, we got to start making some decisions here pretty quick. So, again, one equation is we can adjust the income. You can see as we adjust the income, obviously we're going to adjust the costs as well. Hopefully I'm still here. I don't know what's going on. Okay.
We got you.
On the expense side, same thing. If we adjust the income, that a lot of times our expenses are going to go up a little bit. Our payroll, probably got to hire a few more employees. So you can see our payroll's going up. Facility, that's probably going to stay the same. Our rent's not going to be adjusted just because it would make a little more money. But the end result is we net about $100,000 because we were able to increase our income. Now, the third, or kind of if we're going to adjust the expenses, then essentially, kind of as that first example, the current one, everything stays the same. The only thing that really changes to a large extent is on the personnel side. And this is where, and Cory can probably speak better to this, but this is where if we have some of these virtual team members come into our, practice, there can be some significant cost savings on the personnel side. And a lot of times that doesn't mean, we're going to try and, get rid of employees, but a lot of times, there's natural turnover in a practice. And so with that natural turnover, we can take that as an opportunity to then have a virtual team member, eventually come and join us.
Aaron, you were an earlier pioneer, and I mean, you live in Southern California, kind of the
Let's see
heat map of being expensive.
I can't see anybody now.
Uh-oh. Well, we can see you and still hear you. So
hell and back now with his internet. Aaron, kind of walk me through, because what I think you did is you began earlier on looking at how you could change the game. What did you need to do to manage cost structure? And you were an early adopter of virtual team members, and walk me through how that helped.
Absolutely. So I'm in San Diego. Real estate is a minimum, or at a premium rather. And so I'm in a minimum space. I have 1,800 square feet. We're doing just under 2 million. I'm running 2 doctors at a time. So you've got people running into each other and bottlenecks. So part of it was a necessity as we were growing to, I need more people, but I don't have a place for the people. And then I said, well, what are we doing in the office that doesn't need to be done here? Which was a pretty big question, and a question I posed to the team. I engage my team in this because it's not me running it, it's them running it. And so I said, what are you doing that you don't like doing, you don't need to do? And quite frankly, just grab a piece of paper and write down what you do every single day, and let's start looking at it. So these are our virtual assistant at Werner Optometry. Vina on all the way on the right. She works with the doctors, and so all their roles have somewhat kind of grown and progressed. The game's always changing, as you say, and so and as we learn their strengths as people, we start leveraging those strengths. So Vina has a healthcare background, and so she is a virtual scribe. She's in on the iPad with the doctors taking notes. She's in the EHR, and beyond just scribing, because I hate using that term for her. It sounds too minimal. She's helping with the prior auth on insurances. She's helping to order contacts. She's making sure that the chart notes are complete and whatnot. So she's really that right-hand person for our doctors. If you go into your primary care doctors, they typically have their nurse, that their go-to person that handles a lot of the the doctoring and the communication back and forth, not the doctoring, but the doctor administrative type task. So that's Vina, and she can do that easily. One of my partners is a dry eye doctor. She spends about half her time, if not more, on dry eye. So Vina, gets the right paperwork for the patients, follows up with the patients, communicates with them, and serves that role. And they've learned to have a relationship with her because they see her on the iPad. She's got a virtual cat that joins her. She recently became a mom, and so sometimes we experienced her life with her. Teo is down in I believe he's in Brazil, and so he initially was brought on to help us with some of the administrative tasks, pulling insurance, verifying insurance, pre-populating some of the paperwork that we needed ahead of time. And we realized that we were completely underutilizing his skill sets. And so he's now been answering our phones. And we use Weave. A lot of the texts come in, so he communicates with patients via text. A lot of the questions that patients are calling about, he has the full capability to answer, and he likes doing that. Where, answering the phone call for the team in the office becomes an annoyance for him. That's what he's here for. He's really good at that. And then Mariana is a unique role. She works closely with both Chris Wolf and I, just helping us keep our lives straight and organized. She helps me manage my calendar. She helps me, sort my emails. She helps me with a lot of administrative projects that I get stuck in. I've got great ideas up here, but it's really hard to put on the paper or build the spreadsheets and type stuff. And so she helps with that. With the office, all of my invoices come in electronically. So she takes those and populates them and puts them into QuickBooks for me. So, little tasks that just kind of wear down on me. And I'll be honest, they're so good that I got to keep coming up for stuff, because what takes me an hour and a half to do, I've learned that she and Teo and the others in their specific roles can get done in half the time because they're good at it. And that's what they do. That's where they excel. So why am I trying to do something that I'm not good at and I don't like doing when they're built for this, right? That's who they are as people. And so it really becomes a lot of fun, and they become part of the family, if you will.
You when we were preparing for this, and I'm going to go share it right now, you put together a really cool form that you share with practices on if they're, and I'll go ahead and screen share it here. If it makes sense to begin the process of hiring somebody. And at the right time, it may make sense to begin to elevate and delegate your team members to the areas that they want to be, just like you surveyed your practice. And my computer is not going to let me share it, but
that's all right. Well, people can download it, and I'll walk through it. But I want to go back because I love numbers. they get
Let
me
me bring
excited.
back our presentation.
And I love KPIs. Jackson and I sometimes nerd out over these. But if you go to the Jackson slides,
Yeah.
because the first thing I did when I saw that slide is I grabbed my calculator because I wanted to know the health of the practice I was looking at. And so on this current practice, if you look at the cost of goods, that practice is sitting at about a 29% cost of goods. If you look at their facility, that's at about just under 8%, which is typical. Both those are typical numbers, depending on where you are in the country. So we're painting with a broad brush. The operations, in my world, I like to call that things. That's just kind of everything that doesn't fit in one of the other buckets, and that's at about 12%, which is right. And personnel, this would be a combined doctor and staff personnel, which puts it at about 52%. If you were to split those up, puts it about right. Staff is typically around 28 to 30, 25 to 30, depending on where you are in the country. And then doctor compensation. So the numbers there they're sitting in the right buckets. But to Jackson's point, just because the numbers are in the right buckets doesn't mean the cash flow is positive. And so that was the first thing I looked at. And so when I looked to say, hey, do we need another staff member? The questions I ask in my mind are, yes, the team feels overwhelmed and they're busy, but let's make sure, one, the practice can help it. And on this example, when you saw the adjusted income and the practice grew by about 200,000, well, that usually requires 1 to 1.5 staff members. And if you look at the math, there's the additional revenue for a staff member. So, you have to invest to make those growth changes. But are you bringing the right person on your team, or are you just putting another person on your team? And, if I'm a football coach and I need a wide receiver and I, just bring the guy that says he plays football on, but he's a lineman, I'm not going to have a very good wide receiver. Right. And vice versa. If I bring a wide receiver and tell him to play lineman, it's going to be fun to watch one down, but that's the last time we watch the guy. So it's really understanding what you need. And so in my mind, the way that I run through the math is your typical revenue per staff hour, I like to break it down as small as I can, is about $100. So if you take all of your staff hours, and on this one, I'm talking non-doctor staff. So revenue per staff hour, I like to be around $100. If I'm significantly higher than that, I'm probably overworking my team unless I have a very high end practice. If I'm below that, we need to optimize a little bit more to get it. It's kind of a good number. I also like my revenue for payroll dollar to be about $4. And if you just inverse that math, that means your non-doctor revenue is about 25% of your income. So again, depending on where you are in the country, I'm in Southern California, we pay a little bit more, so mine's a little bit higher than $4. But it's an easy way of kind of judging where you're at. And then I like to see my non-doctor staff payroll as a percent of revenue somewhere 26 to 30%, I think is where we're seeing a lot now. Jackson, if my numbers are off or you're seeing different, feel free to jump in. But what I do is when somebody says I need more staff, in fact, when my team says, hey, we need more help, I pull these numbers up and I say, here's where we're at. Hey, guess what? You guys are doing like $110 per staff hour, right? And my non-OD staff compensation is dropped because you're highly producing. Yeah, you probably need some help, and let's get you that help, right? If they're the other way skewed, I say, hey, maybe we've got either we're too heavy or we're not optimizing. The cool thing about the world, when the opportunity we have now with virtual team members, is I get to pause before I just throw an ad out on Indeed to hire a warm body, is to say, who do I want to hire and what do we want to hire for? What are the tasks we want to move on to this person that makes sense? Not that I don't like to do, but that makes sense. And often in a practice that isn't leveraging virtual team members or leveraging them enough, a lot of the opportunities really don't involve touching a patient, appropriate touching, right? And something in front of you. I'm not adjusting a frame. I'm not, needing to put your head in the instrument in the pretest room to take a picture, right? And then you can challenge yourself. Well, do I need to have a physical person there to take an insurance card? Maybe. But could they take a picture of that and upload it through a secure portal? Could they take a picture of it and send it to us appropriately? That doesn't require a person. I do it all the time with my driver's license. And so what are the things that we can move out of the office and find an opportunity for a remote team member, a virtual team member to do for us that alleviates a lot of the stress from the office. And it creates an opportunity outside the practice for an individual who's really good at that type of skill set. And from a financial standpoint, typically virtual team members are paid very well for the environments they're in their countries and their situations. But my cost is roughly half, 60% of what an in-person would be, because the cost of living in San Diego is not the same cost of living as elsewhere. And I asked them, because Cory, I love you, but I didn't fully trust you when we first met, to say, hey, is he telling me this? And so
this is why we bring Aaron on, because Aaron's no BS and he can lay it straight. And this is, I was telling Gonzalo, this is why I like you.
Yeah. And they go, oh no, this is good. Like here's the jobs I had before. And like, this is way better. I make more money. I'm happier. Like this is great. And I was surprised, because we just put on the Southern California glasses, and that's how I view the world. And that's not how the world works. So they get paid very well. And what it does is it allows me to, so in my office, I've got a set percentage of revenue that go to my staff, right? So if I can free up some of that money, now that's opportunity for raises. That's opportunity for bonuses. That's opportunity for profit sharing. So everybody wins along with me. By the way, virtual team members are involved in that. And so I want to make sure that they get raises as appropriate, that they have opportunities as appropriate, because they're part of the team. And so it just really creates a much better engagement and cohesion at this level. And you mentioned multiple times, Cory, that the game changes, and it always does. I hate the new kickoff rules in football. I think it's, lame, right? But the guys who, when helmets first came out and became a rule, I'm sure there were people who thought that was lame too. I still watch it every Sunday. But we have opportunities now we didn't have 10 years ago, 5 years ago. Right? We didn't have these connections. We didn't have the ability to have somebody down in Brazil be basically in my office. It's pretty cool. And so as the game changes, the opportunities change as well. And our tools to address that change become more immense. So I think it's just a matter of continuing to see what's happening around us and then leverage the opportunities we get.
Yeah. And if I can add one thing. So one thing where I feel like it plays into the picture as well is, if your optometry practice is working out of 1,500 or 1,800 square feet, and you need to add 3 more bodies, you kind of run into this problem of, well, where do we put them? It's like we know we need somebody to help with billing. We know we need somebody to help with phones. We know, in order to grow, and look at any company. I mean, the way companies grow is they do become more efficient, but at some point you just have to have more people do the work. And so as you continue to grow, sometimes we just run out of space. And if you're in California, space is at a premium. So we start to look at practice in what areas of the practice are actually generating revenue. And it would just be a dumb decision if we decided to take the optical, and it's like, well, we're going to put cubicles in there so we can put 3 more people. It's like, no, we want that space for retail optical, so the opticians can have room to walk around and sell glasses and make it a good experience. And so, I mean, that's just another reason where having virtual team members comes in and just adds so much value, because they're still there. I mean, like, maybe physically they're not there, but a lot of time they're in your ear, they're on an iPad, they're there in the practice, but they're not taking up space, which is, it's such a premium in a lot of parts of the country. So,
and what's interesting, you said like they're there, but they're not there. We know that any practice is chaotic most of the time, or at a lot of points during the day. It allows them to be focused, where someone can be, instead of distracted every couple minutes while they're trying to do insurance verifications or work on following up on claims, it allows them to be really dialed in. And so it gets people, as Aaron's mentioned multiple times, in the lanes that they're passionate about, doing what they're best at. And that is where you get an empowered team that is performing and delivering at a result that puts you in the cut above.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Want to kind of kick into any questions that anyone has. And then we've also got the download where people can go through the worksheet to really assess where their practice is at. But Aaron, if you want to look through some of the questions that we have on the chat, if you can see that, is there any that you feel would be interested in Jackson? If you want to pick one as well, that, you feel you'd be really prepared and able to talk about.
I like, so there's a question here about current staff seeing a virtual team member. By the way, I like the term virtual team member over virtual assistant. It's because I think
I do not like
part
it.
of our team.
Thank you.
So it's how they see them as not a threat. And that's a great question, because every practice that I've worked with, including mine, when we started with our first virtual team member, it felt as kind of one of two things: either a threat, or, hey, I'm gonna, this is a new kid on the block, and I'm gonna move all the crap I don't want to do onto this person, and so we're just gonna dump it onto them, which is why I don't like the term assistant, because some offices have seen that person as like, well, you get to do the stuff I don't want. I believe that every practice has a team, every family has a team. I'll use my wife and myself. She does most of the driving to my daughter's soccer stuff. She's certainly better at managing the soccer schedule and what needs to get done and emails sent out for the raffle and the fundraisers and what color uniform she's wearing that day. I make sure that we have the easy up tent and all the chairs in the truck for the game. And so there's always a division of labor based upon who's more skill set at certain things. And the larger you get, the more divisions of labor and the more people need to happen. And some of those are going to be facing, and some of them aren't going to be facing. You get really big, and we've used sports analogies, so I'll continue that. You look at the San Diego Padres, and there's people in that organization that play key roles that the public will never see and never understand. And that person gets a World Series ring. For the Padres example falls apart, but that's where they get the ring, just like the players on the field, because they're part of that organization, and they can't win if you don't have those people there. And some people you may know really well, like season ticket guy. I know Robert really well. I've never met Robert, but if I've got a problem with my season ticket and I need somebody to help me out, or I want to change some games, or maybe adjust some seats or add some seats, I call Robert and he takes care of things for me. I don't think because I don't see him and I haven't shaken his hand in person, he's any less of a support. In fact, I appreciate that he's there and I don't have to go down there and talk to him in person. So I think that helping your team understand that we're just growing and we're going to move the right tasks to the right people on the bus just runs a lot more efficient, and have them be part of that process. Because there's another question to say, well, what do you move over there? I don't know. My practice runs different than yours, but sit down and just grab a piece of paper and start writing down what you do, and then grab a yellow highlighter and say, hey, everything in yellow requires physical touch here. Everything in the blue highlighter, I really don't have to do. Those are some of the tasks that we can move out, and then don't problem solve. We've leveraged our relationship manager at Teem to help problem solve some things that we're like, well, how do I get this done? She's seen it more. I've leveraged some of my colleagues who have virtual team members. I see Alan on the call. I probably haven't told him this because I've stolen some ideas from him and I don't want his head to get too big, but like Alan's done some cool things that I was like, that's a great idea. I'm going to steal that and do it. So it's, it's learning and growing as you go.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And one that I saw there that kind of stood out is, sometimes the other employees, it's a new thing. So sometimes they look at this virtual team member as a threat. It's like, what is this doctor trying to do? Are they just trying to replace everybody in here with somebody virtually to just save a buck? And I think the way that you address that is in like even kind of in part of the slide that I covered, like, yeah, we are trying to be conscious of expenses, but a lot of times adding these virtual team members allows the practice to actually grow. So, maybe that phone call that came in that was missed because everybody was too busy to answer the phone call. And so that patient just picked up the phone and called another practice down the street and ended up going there. It's like, well, if we can have a virtual team member that's on that, they answer that phone, they schedule that patient, and they do that consistently, and you start to add, a couple more patients every day to the schedule, then that's going to turn into extra dollars in the bank account. And if there's extra dollars in the bank account, then there's a lot more opportunities for them to either make more money or get a bonus or, have other opportunities within the practice. And so, sometimes as we present these virtual team members to staff, it's not just purely like we can't kind of create this culture of like we're cutting all costs and you're next on the chopping block. And it's no, we truly, we want to be mindful of expenses, but at the same time, the ultimate goal is we want to grow this practice. And as we grow and become more efficient, just everybody wins. And so that's where, hopefully kind of flip that culture around. And it's like, everybody just loves these virtual team members. And Aaron probably, can speak of this more, but every practice that I've talked to, I've never talked to one and they're just like, oh, like nobody likes them. It's once all the staff becomes, familiar with the virtual team member, it's just like they're all on the same team. They're all trying to do the same thing, and they work really well together.
Yeah. To your point, Jackson, and I'm glad you brought that up and reminded me. When I went back to the metrics, I talked about revenue per payroll dollar being about $4. Well, remember, if you bring a new person on, and I'm spending $1,000 just because I can do the math quickly, right? $1,000 on this new person, I should be generating $4,000 of revenue.
Yeah.
So this is how you invest in business and grow. Now, you can't just hire a bunch of people and hope the money shows up. There's got to be a systematic approach to doing so, but it's not taking away. It's additional. It's adding to. And an in-person team member that's paid $20 an hour, $25 an hour. Well, you're paying them more. You expect the return to be a little bit higher, and so, but that 4x number still comes into play. Maybe not the first week, but over the first, by the end of the first quarter or so, maybe first 6 months. Same thing for a virtual team member, right? Maybe you are not paying as much, but you should still expect that 4x return on because of increased efficiencies, because of everything else. So I think that gets lost sometimes when we try to save money. This isn't about saving our way to prosperity and wealth. This is about investing and making the right investment so we get the proper returns that, quite honestly, we reinvest back into practice. I mean, that's just what optometrists do. We get money, we buy more equipment. We get money, we build different tools and invest in technology that really helps our patients. There's very few optometrists I know that are driving around in jet helicopters and have their $10 million boats. In fact, I know none. There's a lot that say, hey, here's what I'm buying this year. Here's what I'm investing this year. Here's where I'm taking my team to training this year. That's where that extra dollars comes from, is they can reinvest back in.
Yeah. I want to begin the process of beginning to wrap us up. And Aaron, you said something really interesting a minute ago. All of us value different things, and all of us need to optimize in it. There's not a cookie cutter approach or fit. We all have different things on our own individual practice rocket that we need to trim, optimize, or improve. And that's why there's so many great tools today. There's great community that you've built within Vision Source. Jackson, you provide a incredibly unique, and for a long time, a not had optometric viewpoint. Before, Aaron, you said when we were getting on, people just got their taxes done and they bought a $50,000 machine at the end of the year to reduce their taxable income, and it put them in a deeper position. I've said it a bunch, the game's changed, but there is amazing community and tools even outside of virtual team members where people can decide what they want to improve or optimize or change. And there is a true community. And I've been in dental and vet and a bunch of other industries because of the size in optometry, where there's about 40,000, 45,000 total clinicians. There's a community that cares and supports for each other. And that's what's really unique. And no matter where people want to optimize or improve, I think there is companies and people that can go out there and help them accomplish that. Mm-hmm. Before we wrap up, Jackson, anything you want to say in closing? And then Aaron, would love to have you finish us off.
Just in closing, I'll kind of repeat what I said at the beginning. As we look at a practice and kind of just set everything aside. Look at yourself as a business owner. I'm sure most of the people on this call, they're probably running a practice and either stressed or have 1,000 things going on. I think if you can really set the focus on just getting really good at making other people great, it's going to solve a lot of your problems, because the more you hang on to them, it's just that doesn't solve anything in the long term. But the better you can get at bringing other people, other team members, whether they're in the office, virtual, and the better you can get at making those people great, I mean, one, they're going to love you forever, because you're going to teach them skills, you're going to level them up, and they're never going to forget that. They're going to look at you as a mentor, and like they're just going to be so thankful for, kind of taking them under their wing and giving them these opportunities and these skills. But two, it's just like, as we look at it from a financial picture as well, it's just really going to, create a culture in the practice of, like, we just want everybody to succeed. And the way that we succeed is, we have to succeed as a practice, because, money's what pays the bills, and successful team members is what kind of helps generate that revenue. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And all I'll say is that, I love being part of this journey. I think that, if you don't have fun playing the game, that the game starts to play you, and that's where burnout happens. So, have fun with it. Welcome the changes, welcome the challenges, welcome the stresses, because that's how we get better. I love stealing ideas from each other. I love being able to have platforms like this and what I do at Vision Source and the podcast to share those ideas. So it's, free stealing from everyone else, but, try to have fun. There's things that we can't fail at in clinical care, but there's things that we can try and succeed and then learn from. If they don't succeed in business, and this is, I believe, one of those, but the grass is definitely greener as we keep trying to, see what's on the other side of the fence.
Awesome. Well, gentlemen, thank you both for being with us this evening. Encourage everybody who is watching to reach out to Jackson, reach out to Aaron. They both care about the community. And that's what makes what is happening in optometry challenging, but fun. And the game's going to continue to change. And we'd encourage you all to continue to change your game with it at the same time. So thanks, everybody, for being with us. And we'll see you at our next month's webinar.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, guys.